Brant is one of the most popular characters for Arena Sita, and someone who I'm very glad to say I enjoyed seeing a lot in the story. But for being the first male character in quite a while, Brant has quite a lot to live up to. And does he? Well, he seems incredibly fun to use and has a lot of utility within his kit. But before we discuss further, I should probably explain to you what his kit does, starting off with his basic attacks. Most of it is just going to be regular. He has a regular 4-hit basic attack, a normal heavy attack, but where he becomes special is with his mid-air attacks. His mid-air attacks are very special because unlike Chang Li, they don't just come out. You can either choose to press them, in which case they'll just come out as if it's a Chang Li basic attack, but if you were to hold the button, he does a charged version, which goes on for longer, but also deals a ton more damage. Its multiplier is a lot higher than normal. If you release the button during this charged up attack, you'll be able to flip back, which also deals damage. And after the mid-air basic attack free, he will automatically do a flip back. However, you are going to need to time this correctly, because if you miss your first basic attack in the mid-air string, you will immediately have to fall down, because you need to be able to hit that first basic before he does the rest. He also has a special heavy attack called Rhapsodia Improvisio, which is not really that strong. It counts as heavy attack damage, which is not most of his damage, and also just kind of doesn't have a great multiplier, but it's there for the people who want to use it. His resonance skill is very simple. He'll simply flip backward and shoot the targets within range. However, if you press the skill button during his mid-air attack stage, he can plunge down, doing a mid-air attack plunge. Then next, for his Resonance Liberation, he will do a large chunk of fusion damage, which can be performed in mid-air. He will also heal the entire team based on his energy regen, and after casting his Resonance Liberation, he will gain 2 separate enhancements, one of them called a Flame and another one called My Moment. A Flame will make it so that whenever you hit targets, you generate more Forte, and My Moment will make it so that Brant increases his attack based on his energy regen. This is also an effect within his Forte circuit, however the one from his Resonance Liberation is even stronger, giving him 20 attack for every percentage of energy regen above 150, up to a maximum of 2600 attack, which will cap out at 280% energy regen, which will be quite hard to reach without his signature weapon. As for his intro skill, he will deal fusion damage and also enter Interlude Applause. This essentially just means that you can begin your mid-air attack at stage 2, which will be removed if the attack is ended early or Brant is switched out. So you can still do your liberation and then start with mid-air attack 2. His outro skill will enhance the next Resonator's fusion damage and resonance skill damage by 20% and 25% respectively. This is a perfect synergy for Chang Li, however it will be cancelled when this Resonator swaps out. So this will only really be useful for hypercarry Chang Li, and not as much for a quick swap team, aka the teams that Chang Li is known for. And then finally for his Forte circuit, Saga at Sea. At all times, he will have his attack increased based on his energy regen. However, without his ultimate enhancement, it's only 12 attack per energy regen, and then 1560 as a maximum for his attack buff. So it is quite a bit lower, and if you want your Brant to do strong damage, you need to use the Liberation beforehand. Next up, his Forte bar. He will have up to 100 Bravo. He will be able to get Bravo when normal attacks, intro skill, or resonance skill hit the target. And as I said earlier during the Resonance Liberation, the amount of generation he has is doubled after using his Liberation, so this just incentivizes you to start with it even more. When Bravo reaches 25, 50, 75, or 100, he'll be able to heal all of his team members. And then when Bravo is fully restored, he'll be able to replace his Resonance skill with an enhanced skill called Returned from Ashes. He's able to consume his entire Forte to deal fusion damage and grant a shield. The damage is counted as basic attack damage, and performing it while in the Aflame state will end the Aflame state instantly. And considering the fact that this Aflame state is what causes Brant to get so much more attack than usual, you definitely want to wait with this as long as possible, just to get that much more damage out of your basic attacks. Then for his inherent skills. His first inherent skill will make it so the healing you get from getting a certain amount of Bravo will be increased by 20%, and the second inherent skill will increase his resistance to interruption while in midair, and gives him 15% free fusion damage bonus. Overall, I think Brant's kit is an incredibly unique take on the healer. It means that not only is he just a healer and a shielder, he's also capable of dealing damage and can even buff fellow fusion characters and even skill damage, which is very nice to see considering our current skill damage buffing roster is rather limited. You could even use Brant as a dual carry with someone like Carlotta, and you can give the skill damage bonus right as Carlotta wants to use her ultimate and her forte heavy attack, meaning that this dual carry team should be stronger than the one with Chang-Li. You can even run it together with Jinshi, although you would be forced to use Verena for your healer for coordinated attacks, or you can even run Jeji, where you start off with Brant, then you go into Jinshi, and then you go into Jeji, and then you go back into Jinshi, although Jeji would need to have 100% uptime on her ult for this to work. We are sorely lacking in skill damage buffers, so the fact that Brant is able to do that is very nice to see despite his role as a healer, usually wanting him to have a more generalist bonus. As for some other teammates you can run, obviously you can also run a triple DPS team running Brant, Shang Liao, and Chang-Li. While this won't be the best team ever, it definitely will be a unique experience. And I think that Brant opening up teams like this to be playable is already unique in its own right. You can even run Brant as a hyper carry considering his damage being so solid. You can run him with Sanhua because most of his damage counts as basic attacks, and you can run Shorekeeper or Verena as your standard healer, despite Brant already having healing within his own kit. One concern that I do have for Brant is getting the actual amount of energy regen that he wants to have. It's already really hard to get to 280% with his signature weapon, and considering that the only 4-star sword with energy regen is Overture, which gives literally no buffing to Brant's damage, I think it is quite unfortunate that his weapon options are a bit limited. Although, since he gets so much attack from his energy regen, you can choose to run a 3-star weapon. But unfortunately, the only 3-star weapon with energy regen is, again, a weapon that doesn't seem to buff Brant's damage at all, so his damage potential will be severely hampered without his signature weapon. Speaking of which, his signature weapon has a base attack of 412 and gives 77 resonance energy regeneration, which is the same as Shorekeeper's weapon, who also has very heavy ER scaling. Seems to be something that the healers have in common. The passive will give him 8% crit rate, and after casting Resonance Liberation, basic attack damage bonus is increased by 24% for 10 seconds, and when casting a basic attack, it will be additionally increased by 24% for 4 seconds. So it is just the standard 48% damage bonus that we are very much used to with our weapons, because this is something that also happens with Jinshi, Jian, Shang Liao, all that other jazz. 48% damage bonus to their primary damaging tool seems to be the norm for signature weapons. Now it's time to talk about its sequences. First of all, when using his Forte skill, it will temporarily reduce the movement speed of enemies when using it on, and performing your intro skill or doing a flip after a midair basic will give Brant 20% universal damage bonus stacking up to 3 times. This is honestly just incredibly strong. It reminds me of a way better version of Chang-Li's S1, which is just there to give convenience, but Brant takes convenience and then also turns it into a 60% damage bonus. Honestly, kind of a ridiculous sequence one if you ask me. Then for the second sequence, it will increase the crit rate of his midair attacks and his Forte skill by 30%, and performing intro skill will mark a target for 20 seconds. This mark will explode when they take skill damage, triggering once per second and dealing fusion damage equal to 440% of Brant's attack. This is considered basic attack damage, and can explode up to 2 times. This seems to just be more synergy with Chang-Li, because it is specifically triggered with skill damage, but it's not like it's locked to Chang-Li, because Brant's skill only has a 4-second cooldown, so he himself will be able to trigger both of these even if you're running him as a hyper carry. His third sequence will increase the damage multiplier of his Forte skill by 50%. Not the most incredible sequence, but considering how strong his S1 and S2 were, this is honestly pretty fair. For sequence 3, the shield obtained from his Forte skill is increased by 20%. Honestly, if you're just looking for damage, this is literally useless, but a little bit of extra sustain is always nice considering his sustain within base kit is not that impressive. Now for sequence 5, when you deal basic attack damage, Brant gains 15% basic attack damage for 10 seconds. Much like Phoebe and Carlotta, this is a pretty disappointing S5. But also much like Carlotta, I think this will be changed in the future. And then finally for S6. His mid-air attacks multipliers increase by 30%, and when you cast a Forte skill, it will generate an explosion, dealing fusion damage equal to 36% of the Forte skill, which is also considered basic attack damage. While not being like a Camellia S6 or anything, or maybe not even a Jinchi S6, it is still very good if you want to focus in on Brant's damage. And let's be honest, if you're willing to go for S6 Brant, oh my lord, you want Brant to do damage. Overall, I think Brant is an incredibly unique character, who not only opens up more possibilities for team building, but also strengthens archetypes that weren't exactly getting much love from Kuro games. When we compare him to the other 5-star in this update, being Phoebe, who I've already made a video on, I think his kit is way more cohesive. But that's also partially because he wasn't trying to juggle 2 roles at once, as long with a new mechanic that's barely been in the game. So it makes sense that Brant is way more of a logical character than Phoebe is. I think he is a good character, but definitely not on the same level as someone like Shorekeeper or even Verena. He very much has his own place in the meta, and his own niches, without stepping on the toes of pre-existing characters. I myself am going to be pulling for Brant because he looks incredibly fun to use and opens up synergies that I'm very interested in trying. But are you going to be pulling for Brant? Let me know in the comments below. If you liked the video, be sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe to my channel, as there's going to be more Brant and Phoebe content coming along. If you want to just talk to me, the best way to reach me would be from my Discord, which is linked in the description. Otherwise, you can follow me on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, where I just post my random thoughts whenever I have them. But that'll be it from me. Peace.